Hey, it's Warren Whitlock here with some more emerging technology discussion. Today, I'd like to talk about the thing that drives me the most in everything that I do. It has for some time, and that's friction. In any process, in anything you have to do, especially you have to do it a lot, or trying to scale, friction becomes very important. And I was thinking about this as I read a story about titanium sapphire. Titanium sapphires are things you make lasers out of. There's more than one way to make a laser. I'm not sure if this is entirely new as the substance or just going that direction. But imagine everything you've ever done on with a laser, all the things those have brought us. Laser pointers are the obvious. CD players, DVD player, were all based on having a laser. Laser printers, a former career of mine was just fixing a laser printer. And the one component we could always rely on was the laser. It never failed. They were just fantastic. And that's 40 years ago. Now I'm just reading about lasers of the future that are working in labs. And essentially at this point, they're talking about how good it's going to be for lab to be able to do these things. Instead of having a big desktop, tabletop contraption that's made to do a laser and then do whatever scientific experiments they're doing with it, they're able to put that on something that's more or less chip-sized. And of course, the lasers we know are all very tiny already, but everything, even in the big laser beam, shoot it up to the moon kind of thing, is all going to be able to be shrunk to 1/1000th of the size of the actual little laser unit. We showed a picture of some of the substance on a cube, and then propped up against it was this little tiny line in the picture leaning against the cube, and all of that was on the head of the quarter. And that's how much miniaturized, 1/1000th the size of lasers that we knew before. And I don't know how that translates to the size of a laser in a CD-ROM, since we don't even use those anymore, which is everything gets, it's just, wow, 1,000 times as, which is, the thing is, it was 10,000% more efficient. And so what they talked about, it was a lab report or a scientific type journal that I was reading. And it said they'll be able to put them everywhere. And when doing experiments, be able to replicate and do much more. And that's what friction is about. There's all sorts of friction. About friction, two things rubbing against each other and how that force will slow things down. Basically, that's why things travel in space so differently. You just let it go and it keeps on going. There's no friction. And we do what we can to reduce friction with the lubricants and things like that. But there's other kind of friction, is economic friction. The work we're doing in Africa now is about reducing the friction in being able to do money transfers and payments and all the exchanges, all the things that operate on trying to move money from one place to another. I recall when, if you wrote a check, then you put it in an envelope and then you mailed it to somebody. I actually recall a time when, I don't know why, maybe we thought the 3-cent stamp was too much. My mother would load kids into the car and drive around town to deliver checks to places to pay bill, utility bill, phone bill, whatever like that. And boy, that was inefficient. That was hours to do that. What we have today is the ability to push a button and something gets paid, to put your phone near something and it's paid, to hit a just key on your keyboard. That's reduced friction and increase the productivity of everything involved. I guess I should speak a little bit to why friction is so important to look at, because when you reduce the friction, you get a better result every time. And it's not about inventing something new and doing a better job. Like in the case of the laser, you could also reduce friction by making sure that the paperwork that the lab needs to to get those new lasers becomes something that's pretty much instant or budgeted or known or to a certain amount of money, and employee can put it on a company credit card, all those kind of rules that can all now be easily embedded into our automation. And it makes it so there's not 16 meetings on how we're going to buy a new box of pens for the office. Yeah. So social friction becomes when you do need to talk to the other people and get things done. If you want to form a group and you want the group to be cohesive, you better spend some time. One I personally have a lot of trouble with is greeting people. I'm here recording. My producer gets on and I want to talk, but I'm also thinking, hey, I'm here to record the podcast. Let's get right to it. And I forget niceties all the time. Hi, how you doing? Having a good day? How's the weather where you are? Those kind of things that we do. And I find when you leave those out, you get a lot less effective results. So you need to deal with the social friction. One of the ways to deal with social friction is not have it come into places that you need to go to get something done and put that into more time for the social that's bonding, that's helping people, that's a deep conversation listening to somebody rather than, hi, how are you? How's the weather? And then we get cognitive friction. Oh boy, I could go all day on just cognitive friction in my own life. Things that get in the way of thinking, oh, I can't do that because then I first I have to do that. Oh, no, I got to do that. But let me think about the meaning of life first. Okay, there's all sorts of things that break down that, then especially in my creative process. I'm a creative making stuff like this, always in the way. Let's take a look at what emerging technologies have to do with that. Artificial intelligence, boy, we can't overemphasize that. Anything that's a repetitive task that gets in the way that's something getting done, you can replace with having a machine do it. And not just have a robot do the action for you, but actually the thinking of it and writing. I'm working off of an outline as I talked to you today. That was produced by an AI. I can write down the points I want to talk to, but just as fast I can type in friction in emerging technology and come up with, a whole outline of what to talk about. And then 4 other ones so I can choose which one is closest to what I talk about. And then I'm of the type that I'm going to go off on most of what you've heard with not on the outline. But at least I have something so that if I get to a point that I'm going like, okay, that thought's over, what am I going to say next? I can look at it. And I use AI for that. And it has enabled me to do so much more than when I was staring at the blank sheet of paper and starting with that. The IoT devices, Internet of Things, we are embedded in everything. I just saw something yesterday about some technology that was going to allow you to swallow a pill and have it do diagnostics. Of course, the whole time we're asking, how do you get that out when you get done with it? But they showed it with the TED Talk. Guy swallowed a pill and they could see inside his stomach and the doctor showing how it works. And he's using like a PlayStation controller to move the thing around. And if you're like, not really sure it's that accurate, but apparently programming with AI and whatnot worked quite well. Now it gets to other organs outside of your stomach, which they said it did, and do other things. We didn't get the details. Watching that, just offhand, one of them said, one of the things we're going to do is add an accelerometer. Accelerometer measures how fast something's going and whether it's speeding up, slowing down, whether it stopped moving altogether. And yeah, it's common. We have them in our phones. And we use this technology all over the place, but that's something that used to be a big device that had to be built around. When we start miniaturizing these things, it becomes more and more possible to not be worried about things like you can set what how you want to drive your car, and the car will take care of it. And it needs the accelerometer to do that, and many other little technologies like that. Big one that's we're finding is reducing technology now in finance, but mention it briefly. Blockchain and the distributed. In fact, we're talking about distributed AI now, so that AI does not reside in one place, in one big company, that there will be AI, many. Imagine having not just an AI on your phone, but having multiple AI that's available to whatever device that you can ask questions and it can specialize. I could have my podcast writing assistant, which I probably will do and tell you guys about, but it will help me come up with these outlines and what the better examples, research the examples, put them all together, and then only focus on doing that. Instead of being a general AI, it's a narrow AI. And that's one I need. I also need one for other kinds of writing I do. I need another one for, making sure my health's okay, and a health coach. And actually, they're finding mental health is fantastic that way, because the whole process of talking to your AI helps you sort out some of the same thing that you'd end up paying a therapist for. Helps, doesn't totally replace, makes the human contact all that much better. And as we distribute these things, it means that it can't go down. In the situation we're looking at in Africa, not having to rely on central bank with money that may or may not get hyperinflated, other forms of things that are corruption, especially you start sending like aid to someplace, it's going to cause corruption at some point. It's a natural thing that occurs. Even the best of people have to fight the corrupting influences of suddenly having funds available they can control, and trying to set all the rules to make all that work become impossible. But when you have the distributed technology stable, country to country is the big thing we're working on right now. And we can send money anywhere here in the US without a thought. Pretty much to Europe and major countries around the world, I can send money without thinking about it. Cost is fairly low, but in a lot of places, it's still a real pain to get any money transfer. When you help, that goes so much faster. Right now, I'm thinking about what we're going to do with the release of Descriction. I think back to when we didn't have bookkeeping. I'm old, but not quite that old. 500 years ago, there was no bookkeeping, and they came up with the idea of double entry bookkeeping. And that is, if something comes out of an account, it has to go into another account. It has to have a matching entry someplace, so that if you sell an item, you have one less in inventory, but you have more cash on hand. And you have to keep track of both things. And when you audit, you make sure those all match up. And it really helped us do a lot more commerce everywhere. Trade increased, civilization advanced, wonderful thing. Now they're calling it triple entry accounting, where the distributed ledger automatically takes care of having something be there. That I often say in explaining blockchain that it's like a spreadsheet, but you can't change the cells. Everything if there's a correcting entry, it has to be another row on the spreadsheet. You can't go back and change when it's there. And so it's what made it possible for me to send $1 to somebody and they receive the dollar and I don't have it anymore. It has to be kept track of someplace in a ledger. We rely on the bank to do that. Then that means the bank has the money and takes it from your account and puts it in my account, or vice versa. I like it better when it's the first one and the money comes to me. But the distributed ledger means that everybody knows where that money is sitting, and it's instant, and it doesn't need to be audited because it's just there. The other processes need to be audited still, but they're eliminating more and more of those by having money that's completely traceable. And that's basically what makes the blockchain is what makes Bitcoin so solid that it's not going to go away there. We're only going to make 21 million of them and then we're going to stop. And that technology is leaking into just about everything. And then I think we've already talked about the laser. That's a material science. As we are able to use these technologies to make better and better materials, we really get to the point where mining goes down. And there's a lot of places where we are using less or mining, taking out of the earth less materials than we did 100 years ago, and even less than 10 years ago. We have a lot more population on the planet, but we're using a lot less of some element. And that, boy, that's another episode by itself. So what's it going to change? I'm going to be able to get in my automated car and go someplace, but better yet, I'm able to get that coming right to me. Financing healthcare. I think we had a whole episode here a few weeks ago about what the friction is in healthcare. Most of healthcare is paperwork. And when we're able to eliminate that, reduce the friction, it's just that much better. When the doctor is able to come into my room or see me by a teleconnection and diagnose something, enter it in the computer, or the computer knows. I've seen one app of that. It taking notes the way that doctors need to take notes. The transcription of doctor's notes is a little bit different than just I'm recording this and we'll have it transcribed for you. In that case, it needs to be very precise and have some other error checking on it. It has to have a different review process where the doctor and his staff are making sure the notes are correct. But that's getting better and better. And when that's done, then it's like saying stat, get this done right away. It'll all be done right away. And I just can imagine as a senior getting a lot of doctor visits, I see this all the time where I go to see, I think we talked, I told you guys about the cardiologist that I've been seeing, and I get to see the results of everything that's happened over months in another month. And it's taken forever. And I ask all the people involved, the people working on me, working in the office about it, why does it need to take this long? And they don't really know other than it always did. The technology is there that a doctor can see you. You can go get the test and you can get the result of the test back to the doctor, and it can all be done in one visit. Might be a long visit and no more time with the doctor or doing any one particular thing, just the overhead of the driving back and forth and stuff like that. So healthcare is one of the things where we can really reduce friction. And since that's 20% of the economy, that's a big effect. If that 20% drops to whatever the equivalent 10% is, I don't, wouldn't be, you don't do percentages that way, but if it costs $20 trillion and it becomes $10 trillion, whatever the number is, that's a huge effect on society. And it certainly is a number that uses trillion rather than billion. We don't get that right back in our pockets. We'll get the system working more efficiently, and that's the main thing. Retail, of course, the last one. Forget about having a self-driving car to go to the store. I just have this stuff arrive, and exactly what's good for me arriving to my house, and I can eat it, and I can get on with doing more important things like making a new podcast episode for you, rather than going out to breakfast. So it's going to change many things. We talk about the job part of this. It's not about whether or not you're going to lose your job. If you're paying attention to this and you're using it, your business is going to do better, or your job is going to do better. You're going to be worth more, and you're going to work less to get more done. And how could that be a bad thing? Yeah, it's going to be disruptive and causes some problem. The more change coming in the next 5 years than you've seen in your lifetime, even my long lifetime. Things are changing so rapidly that exponential it's not something to think about. Is it going to happen? It's happening. Things are changing faster and faster as every year. There's going to be more change next year than there was last year. There's going to be more change for the rest of this year than there was for the part of the year that's already happened. And it just going like that, it makes sense to be working on the ways that you can reduce friction in whatever you're doing. And if you're not working on that, you're not trying to eliminate friction in your job or career or your business or life, then it's going to be hard to keep up. And yes, that's going to cause some bad things. People will find out they're no longer needed at the job, or they're doing the job with less people, or whatever it is. There'll still be lots of things to do. We've got a long ways to go until everybody's fed and everybody's housed and free. And when we get there, I don't know, maybe we come up with something other than capitalism. But right now, it is the end goal of capitalism is to make sure everybody has equal freedom, equal access to what they need. And we don't do that by trying to redistribute what we have. We make a lot more of it. And with an exponential growth, that means we're going to have 5 or 10 times as much productive assets in a few years as we do now. That might be a next thing to look at. There's some fascinating stats on that. Making a note to do that. We may get to that one next week. The absolute incredible thing can happen when you start looking at abundance of basically everything. And so today, yeah, that kind of goes together. Today's friction will make the next one on abundant. It's going to be just, so much better. But for people to be able to take advantage of that, it's really a decision you've got to make. You won't be replaced by a machine. You'll be replaced by a person using a machine or the computer or the internet or any of the technologies that we've seen. And I can't be your guide and give you all the answers. I want to be, though, a contributor to that, reduce the friction in you getting the information you need. And that's one of the goals of the podcast. And so hopefully we'll be doing this a few more times together. Keep listening, and I'll keep sharing what I can find about the ways we can reduce friction and have a better life. I'm Warren Whitlock, and that's the podcast.